NET presents USA Poetry. This program is devoted to the work of Robert Duncan and John Wieners. This is the poet Robert Duncan, born 1919, Oakland, California. Of his work, Duncan has written, "I make poetry as other men make war, or make love, or make states or revolutions, to exercise my faculties at large." One of the more influential of contemporary American poets, Robert Duncan's major collection of work to date is in the volume Roots and Branches, published by Scribner's. With the painter Jeff Collins, Duncan lives and works in this house in San Francisco in an environment uniquely his own.
I think of myself as a householder in the middle of a city, where this household is in San Francisco, and then San Francisco for me is an extension and again a household. Beyond that, I don't have much picture of the rest. Let's say the rest of the country is almost as vague as living in the rest of history of all of time. And then what one does in the furnishing of a household is about as far as I understand that role of that people make so much about poems, usually talking about discipline, about the poet's selectivity. Everywhere I'm selecting, but I wouldn't view it as an extension of discipline or an economy. It's an operation of intuition for me.
Robert Duncan has written, "I study what I write as I study out any mystery. A poem, mine or another's, is an occult document. And concerning metaphor, the concept that to form is to transform is a magic then. And a metaphor is not a literary device, but an actual meaning arising from, operating in, and leading us to realize the co-inherence of being in being, that we perceive forms because there are correspondences."
The poem works with, not only with sounds and the feelings you have in your body of the dance that's in a poem, of these two together, the sounds that you're working with in the words, and the rhythms in which these words are coming into the form of the poem. The other one, the realm of image. I'm fascinated that it is not that the image is also an endlessly extending field, and one of them that the Renaissance was fascinated by was the emblem, or the picture. Ben Jonson says, "Who knows not picture knows not poetry." When images occur in the poem for me, I see those images the way I see these images in the tarot, not as symbols. The woman with the two vases and the great star here actually is pouring a water from a pool, which then is also the pool of life, and she's pouring souls from life into life, returning them. As I'm working, my preparation for the poem, the thing that comes alive when I come to the poem, is how much I have prepared to see in the immediate part I'm working, what I'm working with. If I see many things in what I'm working with, then I have a great many areas with which I can build. It's like having a block of a certain shape and suddenly seeing that it can fit with many other blocks instead of having set on your mind that it fits only with one. And then you can really start building a kind of architecture. The architecture of the poem fascinates me. I don't believe in the prediction of the future when you lay out the cards or read a poem, but I do believe that you give the script for the future, because we're all dramatists. Now it does occur to me that maybe I like so many objects and I like so many books because in the vast dispersion of that field there's a much greater freedom of choice. The other part that does interest me is the furnishing. Then among the furnitures in a poem like this, for instance, in which I really was drawing upon the things that were around the room and attendant, I make a path through it in which the content of the poem exists. As they come to me, or as I recognize them, as I look at them about the room, I see that path and follow the thought of it and the feeling of it as it goes through. Passages 9. The architecture. It must have recesses, There is a great charm in a room broken up in plan, where that slight feeling of mystery is given to it which arises when you cannot see the whole room from any one place, when there is always something around the corner. From the window shelter, the light. The curtains of daffodil yellow, light beyond. A little night music, after noon. Strains of mahogany on the phonograph, distant intoxications of brazen crisis. The 1930 Können einen toten Mann nicht helfen chorus. The procession with drum roll. In the distance, recess. The stage becomes dark. From the bookcases, the glimmering titles arrayed, keys, Hesiod, Heraclitus, the secret books of Egyptian Gnostics. Take a house planned in this way, with a big living room, its great fireplace, open staircase, casement windows, built-in seats, cupboards, bookcases, and perhaps French doors opening out upon a porch. La Révélation d'Hermès Trismégiste, Plutarch's Morals, Theosophical Essays, Avicenna, the Zohar, the Aurora. I was reading while the music played, curled up among the ornamental cushions, which links the house with the garden, and sparkling into the jeweled highlights given forth by copper, brass, or embroidery. The staircase, instead of being hidden away in a small hall or treated as a necessary evil, made one of the most beautiful and prominent features of the room, because it forms a link between the social part of the house and the upper regions. Below the house, in the dark of the pepper tree, stripped to the moonlight, embraced for the mystery's sake, mounting through us, the garden's recesses. You are to make it, I told you in the past. I do not suppose you recognize me. Owl is what I am called. This is how I am. They saw an owl. Fantastic. At the back of the north wind, the princess and the goblin, the princess and Curdie, Lilith, the lamplight, warm, upon the page where I, romance, in which lost, reading. You will often tell the story. If you do that, you will be able to marry those you love. You will continue to marry, but you will fear me. If I even see you, you will die, which belongs to the inner and individual part of the family life. Last year when I wrote the architecture, and I wrote during that year 20 of these passages and numerous other poems, but there are other times when I go for quite a period before I am ready to work again. At the end of July, I proposed passages 26 and only got 2 lines. They take their souls in war as we take soul in the poem. In this same notebook, along with this series of passages, I have been working on a translation of a long poem by Victor Hugo. The opening line, "O God, whose work goes farther than our dream," drew me for my own purposes. So passages 26 now would go, "They take their souls in war as we take soul in the poem. O God, from whom the work goes farther than our dream, Creator, mysterious abyss from which there goes out a smoke of men, of beings, of sons." In order to have an accuracy, I had to incur being responsible for all errors. This is, sometimes I would compare it to a carpenter. In other words, view the language as a wood that if you make a mistake, you cannot correct it. And so that you have to face your botched work, but then in language you're concerned with the meaning of what you are doing, so that it never becomes a botched work. the mistake in itself becomes the element of what you must work with. Mao's mountain of murdered men, but that's a lot of alliteration. How was one going to... I can't revise it and have to have that big mouthful of Mao's mountain of murdered men. I can, at times, stare and wonder, my God, what am I going to do with that, and have to do something with it. All right. Then my consciousness of that must enter in here, and we will have the alliteration of M's, like Vietnam's burned villages. Irreplaceable with hatred, maimed, hold against bloody poetry, America writes over Asia. To hold properties. Now, if I lose the track, I will just stop. They take their souls in war as we take soul in the poem. O God, from whom the work goes farther than our dream, Creator, mysterious abyss from which there goes out a smoke of men, of beings, and of suns, so deep that he is blue with depth, the shadow, the fullness, and it opens out parts of the sentence. Life rights, Mao's mountain of murdered men, the alliteration of M's like Vietnam's burned villagers, irreplaceable, a hatred, the maimed hold against the bloody poetry America writes over Asia to hold by property theft.
This poem, passages 26, as well as the poem The Architecture, which is passages 9, is part of a long, open-ended work in progress.
I had to develop a poetry where I could shift rapidly because I was not thinking and then writing it down, but I was trying to get from many directions and many levels and upstairs and downstairs, but more than any duality from all sorts of things, the flowing into a form of the things that belong to it.
The work of Robert Duncan has returned to contemporary poetry an element that was rejected by many of the experimentalists of the 20s. This element is the spirit of romance, specifically the free play of the imagination among all the phenomenon available to man, the old story of the romance of forms.
I create in a poem with language in order to participate in what I intuit to be the nature of what's going on in the world. So in a way I discover the world as I discover what my own processes of being part of it and creating, but creating language to me is part of the creativity of man, which is completely in his consciousness. No man's land in which everything moving from Saigon's viewpoint was hostile. They take their souls in war as we take soul in the poem. Dieu qui l'œuvre va plus loin que notre rêve. Creator, mysterious abyss from which there goes out the smoke of men, of beings, and of suns, so deep that he is blue with depth, the shadow, the fullness, parts of a sentence. They must make their long march to make. Life rights we take as necessary. Mao's mountain of murdered men, the alliteration of M's like Vietnam's burned villages, irreplaceable, irrevocable, a hatred the maimed hold against the bloody poetry America writes over Asia. We must recall to hold by properties that are not by property rights, but given to all.
I always feel a congruity of everything. And when I am baffled, I believe that the congruity is there and that I'm unable to find it. Because I experience the world not as a terrible a field of contrast and misfittings, but of a continuous flow of things in time and space. And in my art, I try to have that aspect of the world.
In the 15 years that I've lived with Jess, I've seen how his collages and my way of writing have a great similarity. My poems are filled with the passages that may come from here and there. One time I referred to myself as a sort of jackdaw, and I certainly think of myself as a derivative poet. Well, I derive from this vase. I derive from these minds. When I gave myself permission to be a derivative poet, I found I had my mind full. If I have to be original, I really don't have anything in my mind at all. I think one of the things I had to battle against and overthrow in my mind that is dominant for the generation of Pound and Williams and Stein is it was very important to them that they invented that they were original, although when we turn back we see them also derivative. But just as I think of myself as deriving my being and soul from a world's being and soul, then I derive also my writing from a language that I did not invent. When we, cow is the word on the wall back here. We derive from the whole human experience with this entity of what a cow is. When we derive from, as only the other evening, seeing a TV series on the Maasai in Africa, where these people live on milk and blood and never kill the cow, but live in a perfect biological parasitism in relation to their herds, where they solve the problem of the herds, where to eat and where to find water, and then in turn they never kill them as we slaughter what we eat, but they drink their blood and their milk. Now, in a way, I think no wonder I was attracted to them, because in the first place they're splendid people and their dance is magnificent. And they live in an enclosed world of cow dung and cows, and the main thing in this TV serial was how can we bring these people up to date? How can we really relieve them from their terrible primitive existence? Well, I, in a way, am a terrible primitive existence, and an unlikely one, supposedly, in the world we live in. I derive myself from all of these people who are in no way diminished by my derivation from the milk and blood of other works of art.
For a period during the 1950s, Robert Duncan, along with the poets Charles Olson and Robert Creeley, taught at Black Mountain College in North Carolina. John Wieners, the founder and editor of the magazine Measure, was a student of Robert Duncan's at Black Mountain. Wieners' work deeply reflects that exploration which is so common to the work of Duncan, Creeley, and others, the very personal, inward exploration of the mind and body of love.
To explore those dark personifications of the night world, the prostitute, the dope addict, thief, and pervert. These were the imagined heroes of my world, and what they stood for, how they lived, what they did in the daytime, were the fancies of my imagination. And I had to become every one of them until I know now that they are only deprivations of the self, not further extensions of being, manifestations of want, denial, and betrayal. They assumed no dreamlike poses or positions of the hero. They expressed no noble sentiments. They banded together out of fear and in need. The night was their palace, their working ground. Its neighbor was the dawn, and that never to be known. Daylight was only to be endured, and the night war never ended. There was no declaration of peace or armistice, and love only a casual accident. When it happened, salvation and a change of life, but never seemed to be of any permanence. And one went on, shunning mirrors and the sun. Love was to profit by a night's warmth, a new suit, a week's lodging, a full meal, a soft pillow under the head, but to the heart and brain only a remembrance or memory out of childhood, a tune played on a tinny piano in someone else's house. Morning found us sick, dawn exhausted, night an exhilaration, an excursion. Who wanted to be seen in the daylight when the drudges were out, lazy to do their lives justice? The lanes, Tom called them, abound on weekends. So use them, find them out, and rob them, their villages and houses, of money, furs, and jewels. Yet such it was we became, who let life exhaust us, so that by 30 or before we felt burnt out, and truly were, only to be rekindled later, we hope, by rest, relief, and the redemption of love in the form of a poem, with its order, expression, and release.
What about the world of the Hotel Wentley poems and the world?
For a brief period, the Hotel Wentley in San Francisco had a most remarkable clientele, including Allen Ginsberg, John Wieners, and other poets and painters. It was here that John Wieners wrote his widely acclaimed Hotel Wentley poems. The hotel is now burned out and undergoing destruction.
Oh, it has?
Burnt out.
The building was burnt?
It was closed down by the authorities.
Of the Hotel Wentley, that will be a poem that is burnt out. But there is debris, just debris solid enough to erect a wall against. What was the first poem of the Wentley poem?
Would be this one, the poem for painters. Age bereft of nobility, how can our faces show it? I look for love, my lips stand out, cry, dry, and cracked with want of it. Oh, it is well, my poem shall show the need for it. Again, we go driven by forces we have no control over. Only in the poem comes an image that we rule, the line by the pen, in the painter's hand, 1 foot away from me, drawing the face and its torture. That is why no one dares tackle it, held as they are in the hands of forces they cannot understand. That despair is on my face and shall show in the fine lines of any man. I had love once in the palm of my hand. See the lines there, how we played its game, are playing now in the bounds of white and heartless fields. Fall down on my head, love, drench my flesh in the streams of fine sprays, like French perfume, so that I light up like morning glories, and I am showered by the scent of the finish line. No circles, but that 2 parallels do cross and carry our souls and bodies together as the planets, showing light on the surface of our skin, knowing that so much flows through the veins underneath, the cheeks puffed with it, our sockets full. Pushed on by the incompletion of what goes before me, I hesitate before this paper, scratching for the right words. Paul Clay scratched for 7 years on smoked glass to develop his line, Levine says. Look at his face, he who spent all night drawing mine. The sun also rises on the rooftops, beginning with violet. I begin in blue, knowing why we are cool. My middle name is Joseph, and I walk beside an ass on the way to Bethlehem, where a new babe is born. Not the second hand of Yeats, but first prints on a cloudy window pane. America, you boil over. The cauldron scalds, flesh is scarred, eyes shot. The streets are swarm with vipers, and heavy-armed bandits. There are bandages on the wounds, but blood flows unabated. Oh, stop up the drains. We are run over. Now the game is over, and the line lengthens. Let us stay with what we know, that love is my strength, that I am overpowered by it. Desire pushes out my toes. That too is on the face, gone stale. When green was the bed my love and I laid down upon. Now a new home rises for me out of the fog. I find it with its kitchen cupboards full. In the bathroom, bedroom, living room, once I whispered to you who shall never read this. Why do I lay down my fate in these lines? I don't want these nets over my head in hunger, as hunger is on the people. Make it grapple with the old bait, put old worms back on the hook, old clothes in the closet. I would wear them again rather than this torn shirt on my back. Yes, I would rather be a rock than thrown about on these rapids. And I see no end in view when summer goes, as it will upon the roads like singing companions across the land. Go with it, man, if you must, but leave us markers on your way. South of Mission, Seattle, over the Sierra Mountains, the Middle West and Michigan, moving east again, easy, coming into Chicago, and the cattle country calling to each other over canyons, careful not to be caught at night. They are still out, the destroyers, and down into the south, familiar land, lush places, blue mountains of Carolina, into Black Mountain, and you can sleep out, or straight across into states. I cannot think of their names, this nation. It's so large, like our hands, our love. It lives with no lover, looking only for the beloved. Back home, into the heart, New York, New England, Vermont, Green Mountains, and Massachusetts. My city, Boston, and the sea, again to smell what this calm ocean cannot tell us the seasons. Only the heart remembers and records them in the words of works we lay down for those men who come to them. At last I come to the last defense. No, my poems contain no wild beasts, no lady of the lake, no music of the spheres or organ chants. And yet I know by these lines I betray what little given to me. One needs no defense, only the record of a man's struggle to stay with what is his own, what lies within him to do, without which is nothing. And I come to this knowing the waste, leaving the rest up to love and its twisted faces my hands claw out at, only to draw back from the blood already running there. Oh, come back, whatever heart you are left. It is my life you save.
Well, we're really sort of in the ruins of this room. What was it like when you were here?
Well,
I mean, we're here after a fire when the place is in the debris of a place.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.